Our mission is to educate students for success in a
Okay,
changing
we will begin. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening. We're glad to see so many people in our boardroom. We haven't had this many people for maybe 20 months in our boardroom with us, and we're glad to have you here. It is Thursday, the 18th of November, 2021. We are meeting in the boardroom on Legacy Campus. And we will have roll call to begin.
Larry Jepson, board member.
Randall Bagley, board member.
Steve Norton, superintendent.
Terry Rhodes, board member.
Kathy Christiansen, board member.
Chris Corcoran, board member.
Jeff Nielsen, board member.
Jared Black, business administrator.
And Roger Pulsifer is excused this evening. And we will have the pledge and mission statement led by Steve Norton. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Cache County School District mission is to educate students for success in a changing world.
Thank you. And the most exciting part of our agenda tonight is the recognitions. Our first recognition tonight is for John Cardis, who is recipient of the Golden Key Award from the Utah Governor's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities. And this will be presented by Jenny Bust.
Okay, well, this really is an honor for me. I've known John for years. We taught together at North Cache when we were both there. But John has put his heart and soul into this district and our students with disabilities. So this is John's 27th year in our district. For 10 years, he was at Spring Creek as the life skills teacher. For 2 years, he was at North Cache, and then he's been a coordinator, life skills coordinator for 15 years. And he has been integral in our post-high program, our peer project with Utah State, and just helping these kids and their families transition into their independence. I mean, John follows these kids. He knows them since they were 5 until they graduate when they're 22. So John truly knows these families. He gets to know these families, and he knows what's best for these kids. So this is very much a well-deserved award for him.
I can't wait to get it either. I cancel. I don't want to use that. No, I can't. I can talk about it now.
Oh, people are online. There's thousands out there.
I'll be shaking. No, I just want to say thanks to everybody for, taking the time to recognize me. I'm still really blown away that I was considered for this award, nominated, and I actually won it. There's just so many people in the state of Utah that, are passionate about transition and assisting people with disabilities, and to be, recognized as provider of the year in the state is just, it's mind-blowing. So I just want to say thanks, and is that good enough? Yep. Okay.
Will all those who are here with John please stand? Thank you all for coming. Next, we have another fun award to Nikki Johnson, who is our adult education coordinator in our district. And not only in our district, she is the coordinator for the region. The state wanted to try a region adult ed facility, and Nikki took it on. Well, Cherie took it on first, and then she got Nikki on board, and wow, they've done some amazing things. I think I sign an adult ed diploma at least once a week. It's pretty amazing what they're accomplishing there. So Nikki is receiving the Adult Education Association of Utah's Outstanding Leader of the Year Award, and it will be presented by Cherie Hansen.
I know I'm pretty loud too, John. Boy, this is a great crowd to present in front of, but I'm proud of Nikki, and I have to tell you that the soup today in our principals meeting was talking about having the right people on the bus, and Nikki's the right people on the bus. She is tremendous and has literally taken a program that was floundering, and we were trying to get up and going, and he just couldn't find the right connection, and she came in and just stormed the house. And I have to read what the nomination said because it's so kind. Nikki has a dedication to excellence that is unmatched. She takes fierce accountability for her role in the program, and it has truly made a difference. She follows through relentlessly. You can try not to graduate in adult ed, but I wouldn't. I would just do it. It'd be easier. She always finds common ground and sees ways to empathize with her students. Nikki makes everyone feel welcomed, which is so critical in adult ed because you're already at a disadvantage coming in feeling like you can't do it. And I've watched her as she interacts, and I feel like I can do it, as I sit there and listen to her, and it's so important to have that attitude. I truly don't know where our students or staff would be without her. With that said, it feels exactly fitting that she should be awarded Outstanding Leader of the Year in the state of Utah for adult education. Super proud of you. Gotta say.
Thank you. Very few, because I don't like this stuff, but I really feel honored, and it's an honor to serve there and to help these people, and I think the program is amazing and grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Down. I missed the picture part, so the soup needs to come in, and Nikki and Cherie.
Yeah. That's right,
And
we did.
I think John should have to have a picture.
He's coming back. He doesn't know that yet, but he's coming back.
No, I'm fine.
And now we will have our presentation of Teacher of the Year from Cache High. So, can we have everyone who's here with Nikki Johnson stand, please?
Woo!
Thank you for your support. We appreciate that. And now we'll have recognize our Teacher of the Year from Cache High, who is Emma Heath, and it will be presented by Cherie Hansen. I just wanted to see how many times I could make you walk back and forth.
I'm wide awake. Hey. So this is cute Emma Heath, and Emma was on the road to a doctor program in clinical psychology, and during COVID we rounded her up because she was already working in our jail for adult education and doing a bang-up job, and we needed a teacher, and they were hard to come by at the time, and we thought, hey, you're doing a great job. I talked her into getting her ARL, her alternative route to licensure, and wow, I'm so glad I did. It's hard for me to talk about her without crying. She is like such a powerhouse at our facility. She just loves the kids. She loves the faculty. She's absolutely a team player. I joke with her all the time how much I don't like her because I think it's just one day we're going to lose her to higher education, and I don't know if I can take that. So I'm not going to think about that right now. Here, overwhelmingly, the teachers recommended Emma for our Teacher of the Year, and here's some things they said about her. I love the way she genuinely cares about the students and people in general. She cares for her students so deeply and makes sure each of them feels loved. In addition to that, she knows the material she's teaching very well and is passionate about it. Her classroom is more than just a place where students learn and complete classwork. She makes sure that it is a comfortable environment for them before anything else. She is such a dedicated soul, giving all to her students and people around her. She is honest, sincere, and principled in her work. And she absolutely is deserving of our Teacher of the Year. I just think you should keep in mind that she does work in our jail, in the Cache County Jail, and she educates inmates. And she's flat out impressive. She can change the world at Cache High and then in the evening changes it in the jail. And there's not many that could do that. So congratulations, Em. She just got engaged this year too. That's a mistake. Don't clap, don't clap. No, I'm kidding. He's a rock star. Here she is.
Gosh, make me cry. But I have the best job in the entire world, and I kind of got it by accident, so I feel so freaking lucky every single day. And it's not lost on me that I have amazing, amazing people that I work with that remind me every single day what the mission of Cache High is, and it's a really worthwhile cause. But yeah, I really couldn't do it without them, and I'm really, really lucky. And I hope you get to experience Cache High in one way or another, because it's a magic place, for sure.
Thanks.
Thanks, yeah.
Take a picture.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. Can we have everyone who's here with Emma please stand? And next, last but not least, is Andrea Talbot, who is a language arts teacher at South Cache. And this award will be presented by Randy Benyon.
Here's some flowers for you. Cache High is an awesome place to work. I worked there for about 6 years, and Joel, where's Joel? You were there for another 6 or 7 or 8? 9. 9. It's an amazing, you see people's lives changed every single day. And Cherie's knocking it out of the park. That whole team is amazing. Great group. And we have amazing teachers at South Cache. Andrea Talbot is one of them. She has her bachelor's from USU, her teaching credentials from ISU, and is going to begin her master's degree this fall. We were lucky enough to get her 3 years ago after she taught 5 years up in Pocatello. Andrea, I don't know if you remember this, but you came over to Green Canyon and met with me when you were new, just coming into the valley. And I was so impressed from that initial meeting. I was talking to Dave Swenson thinking, how can we didn't have a spot. And I was like, man, she'd be good. Wish we could get her. Little did I know that 3 years later, I would be lucky enough to get to work with her. And teachers nominated, and we voted as teachers, and it was overwhelming. Andrea was the teacher that we wanted to represent South Cache as Teacher of the Year. There's a few words that I will just throw out there and not give a lot, but I want these words to soak into you. They're words that describe Andrea. Real, down to earth, organized, humorous, incredible sense of humor, kindness that shows, dedicated, helpful, master teacher, and leader in our school. She's amazing. We are so lucky to have her. Congratulations, Andrea.
And I'm pretty sure my parents are watching from their house at home a couple hours away. So that's why I'm going to use the microphone. And is that the camera over there somewhere? Hi, Mom. Well, I feel like the teacher from Cache High, where I have the best job in the world. And I do teach middle school. I can even say that without laughing that I have the best job in the world and I teach middle school, because I absolutely love where I teach. I came from an ideal teaching situation in Idaho, and I feel like I stepped right into another ideal teaching situation. And I appreciate every day the group of people that I work with, the kids that I work with. I appreciate my family who puts up with everything I have to do, but also they have been able to come to school with me, when they're in middle school, and I can be their teacher, and it's been really fun. Well, fun for me. I don't know about for them. But I just love my job, and I'm supposed to be a teacher. I don't know how else to say it. It's what I was meant to do. So I'm grateful that I can be here, and I'm grateful to be recognized amongst all the great teachers that I work with. So here you go.
Congratulations, Andrea. Can we have all those who are here with Andrea please stand? Okay, that is the end of the recognition part of our agenda. And if you want to exit, now is the moment. You're very welcome to stay for the business part, but just saying. Moving on in our agenda, we are to the public input part of our agenda.
No requests to provide public input.
Okay, no public input this evening. We'll move on to our consent agenda. And I'll take a motion to approve our consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve our consent agenda as written. We'll vote. All those in favor?
Coming through. Let me close it and open it back up. Okay. I'm not sure why that's not working.
Oh, there we go. Chris stepped out.
Oh, okay. Should I close it without Chris? Okay. Okay, the voting is closed and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move on from our consent agenda now that that is approved to our action agenda. And the first item on the action agenda is the request for approval of the Green Canyon High School new 2021-22 student clubs for this year. Assistant Principal Jim Crosby is here. If anybody has questions, any questions? after he presented before? Okay, I will take a motion.
I do believe there was a question about our composting that was one of the answers.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Will you come to the microphone to answer that question?
It's very simple. They're not going to be composting. So I went and talked to the teacher today, and I was a little shocked it got by me because that looked alarming. And he said the students had at one time talked about possibly working with the kitchen and doing some things to learn. And I says, we're obviously not doing that. And he goes, yeah, and we never will. So we'll take that off. And
So are they taking it off of their application?
yes.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
It's Mr. McMurdo, and he's very intelligent and knows what to do there, and we're all good.
Okay.
So
Great.
okay. Any other?
Thank you for following up on that.
No problem.
Appreciate that.
Yep.
Anyone have any questions besides that? All right, I will take a motion to approve the Green Canyon High School student clubs.
I move that we approve the Green Canyon High School new 21-22 student clubs.
Second.
All in favor, we will vote.
Voting is closed and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the request for approval of the Green Canyon High School new 21-22 student clubs has been approved, and you can move forward with all of those clubs. Thanks for coming. Next, we have a request for approval of the Ridgeline High School Student Conlang Club. But seeing no one here, I guess we won't ask questions. Does anyone have any problem moving forward with this action without opportunity to ask questions?
So Deanna was here last time and asked, explained it. So if there's any other questions you'd like me to take back to her, I can take them back.
Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the Ridgeline High School Student Conlang Club.
I move that we approve the Ridgeline High School clubs.
I second.
The request for approval of the Ridgeline High School Student Conlang Club has been moved and seconded. We'll vote on that.
Larry, I don't see your vote in. Did you?
I am
Did
not
it?
seeing it. Oh, there it is. Okay.
Voting is closed and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The request for approval of the Ridgeline High School Student Conlang Club passes, so they can move forward with creating that club. We'll move on to our reports agenda. The first item on this agenda is the surplus Richmond property. It will be presented by Scott Rigby.
Good evening. I am here tonight to propose to the board to declare surplus 2.45 acres of property right next to North Cache Middle School. And I have given each of you, and it's also showing on the board there, the property that we are looking to surplus at this time. We have recently gone out and done an appraisal of this property, and the appraisal came back, and you should all have copies of the appraisal. They were sent out earlier. The appraised property came back with a value of $185,000. And so our goal is then to discuss any questions, any thoughts that you might have tonight, come back in 2 weeks for approval, and then we would actually put that out to a surplus bid for the public to bid and hopefully get some good offers for that property. Any questions that you've got on that?
Why are we selling it?
That's a great question. So as you'll notice on the property, this was used as a field that the students would use. One of the big problems that we have had with this property is the hazardous road, which is 600 South, right there, that crosses the street. The students would cross that street for several periods during the day, and it's turning into a fairly busy street with all of the parking at North Cache. And we thought this property is big enough that we could, if we surplus the bottom half, the 2.45, and if we could get some money there, we could increase the parking that is just above that, below the parking that you see there, and also have some money to hopefully reuse and to prepare. And there's another playground that is really not used at this point. So it would be a lot better suited for us to use the playground that is there, but is not really developed to be able to utilize for better student use.
Is there enough frontage on that to make it valuable to, someone else that wants to buy the property?
Yes, we have been approached by Lowers. They are interested in the property. And once again, this has to go out to be surplus, so anyone that wants to buy this can and would have the opportunity. But they are interested in purchasing that property from us to expand. They've actually, you can see the Lauer properties where it says High Creek Holdings there, where it used to be the old seminary building. They bought that property from us, which was basically unusable land. They actually bought the seminary from the church, and then they bought that property, which had a slope that they've created a kind of an access, and they've created a nice facility for their use.
Am I seeing that right? Does it have frontage onto 6 South then?
So it does, yes. There's a little sliver by the trees right there that has access to 600 South.
Okay,
and the parking
that would
lot
conform with the zoning that's in that area?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Where is the other playground?
I'm sorry, I should have put that in there. So it's right behind North Cache. So it's on the other side of the street in the back of the school.
So to the east of the school?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, it's dirt. I mean, it's not dirt. There's the grass, but it's dead, and we don't currently have it being sprinkled. There's not a lot of good use, but it could be turned into a fantastic place that the kids could use.
How much land is it?
I think it's 2 acres. I'm not sure.
Mike, can you remember how big that piece is?
It wasn't quite 2.
So it's just below 2.
It'll more than compensate for what we're giving up there.
Right.
So the part that we're not selling, is that going to be used for something?
Yes, parking, and I apologize for not having that, and I'll have it the next time I come in 2 weeks. But there is a bus parking lot, a very small parking lot that we use for, I think, 4 to 6 buses that we have next to the field that's not being used. We would like to get rid of that and put bus parking and more staff parking right in that area, just above the area that we're looking to sell.
That would be very helpful at North Cache.
Yes.
That is a very dangerous parking lot.
It is, and if you go there, when the kids are crossing, there is no rhyme or reason for how they cross the street. It is a safety hazard.
Or when at the beginning of school or the end of school. Yeah. It's really scary right there.
This is a fantastic opportunity for us to really utilize the space here at North Cache. So we're excited that we have a potential buyer. There again, depends on how, he has to put in a bid, and we will accept any and all bids for that property.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, we think it's probably one of the better things we could do for North Cache.
Will there be a fence around that parking, that
Yes.
new parking area all the way around? So
Correct.
the boundaries will be clear?
Yes, and we'll need to do that, especially with the school bus parking. We will have to put in some good fencing for that, for the bus parking, some secure fencing. Plus, we'll want some barrier between us and whoever buys and builds on that property.
Tim, are you showing us where that play field is?
Thanks, Tim.
Do you see the brown area? Do you see the buses?
Yeah.
Right behind, that brown area is the, the field.
Just a field.
Okay.
The road will go away, be moved, the bus, tennis court will go away, the bus parking will go away, and that will be all playground for, use for PE classes. We'll have additional parking over here and bus parking over there.
Great.
And
Sounds like a much better use of space.
it is. We've been in contact with John Anderson, and he is very in favor of this proposal.
Does the school district own the piece north of North Cache also, all of that block?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's presently being used, but it's got, the front part's got slope.
Right.
Yeah. This will just give them, whoever decided to put a football field in the way they did on that present site, it's just never been ideal to send kids across the street, and then football games are not played with fields that face east and west.
Well, it probably was put in when Highway 91 was only 2 lanes, too.
Yeah, yeah. And, yeah, the whole area is is really being developed nicely, and we think that we'll come out of this with a better plan for our school, too. So, yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Tim,
Thanks,
for pulling that up.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Scott.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a report on TSSA framework change by Tim Smith.
All right. Let me give you just a little bit of background on this, just to refresh your memories. The TSSA funds stands for Teacher and Student Success Act. They are funds that come directly to the schools. Well, they come to the school district, but are distributed directly to the schools each year. We've had them, I think this is the 3rd year that we've had TSSA funds. The idea when those funds were allocated was that they were discretionary, for discretionary use at the school and not directed by the district, other than it was required that each district set up an LEA framework for how those funds could be spent, but then schools had discretion within that framework. So 3 years ago, as a board, you approved a TSSA framework, and we are requesting tonight that we make a couple of adjustments to that framework to provide the schools with a little more flexibility on how they utilize those funds. So the first change is on the front of that document, and it is the last sentence under instructional technology, which basically indicates that they can use the funds for non-instructional technology with district approval, with some consultations, just so we make sure there's consistency on how the products we're buying there and using across the district. So anyway, that's the one change on the front, to provide them some more flexibility there.
Tim, can you give me an example of non-instructional technology?
Yes, so some of our schools wanted to do some updates on their camera systems, which are getting quite antiquated. It's a large school safety issue from their perspective to be able to monitor students and have some footage when something occurs at the school so they can look at that footage. So it's those type of things that they're looking at doing that the framework doesn't currently allow.
Okay.
And then the other changes on the back, the last full paragraph on that page before the numerical there, we've added capital improvements include funds to acquire. These are not, you can't use them for capital funds for equipment that is over $5,000, improvements in the building or school grounds, school bus rent or lease payments, or portable classrooms. So that's in the law, and we just wanted, as we made the change with non-instructional technology, we wanted to make sure it was clear to the schools if an item goes over $5,000, the actual TSSA funds, you couldn't buy a copier, for example, that was over $5,000. And that needs to be clear to the schools. So that's the change we're requesting.
Anyone else have questions? All right, thank you, Tim.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, we have a school fees report for school year 2021. Statistical school, oh, yes, I remember this one. It's the fees waived by, and Mike Lichty will make this presentation.
Yeah, I'll just bring it up here quick if I can get these others windows to close. In the handout, and I'll just scroll through it here, there's 3 years of information here. We have to turn this report into the state in the middle of the summer, and we have to actually show how many fees were charged, how many were waived, and what percentage of that was. And I'm really just going to roll down to the last report that we submitted this fall for the 2021 school year. So if you look at line 51 there, total dollar amount of student fees waived, 152,000 amongst our secondary schools. Our elementary schools do not charge fees, and that's why we're just reporting the secondary schools there. And then line 55, the total dollar amount of student fees charged, 3.3 million. And you can see by each school the fees that they charge. And even though, and they can be different, because even though the board has approved some fees, they don't necessarily have to charge those fees, or they can charge less than that amount on the fee. That's why you're going to see some variation. And then the last part I wanted to show you is the percent of received funds that were waived by school. In the law that's currently out by the state, it says the district has the responsibility that if it's way out of proportion, some school is way out of proportion, somehow the district should be moving revenues around to equalize fee waivers amongst the district. And where Jared and I have talked a little bit about that, we don't see anything out of character on this to be worrying about moving or shuffling any fees currently in our district. The one that points out there, you could look at Cache High. It says 22% of their fees were waived compared to the other schools. And I did talk to Cherie about that. She is not worried about that because she receives quite a few other funds from the state for youth in custody that compensates her for that. So all I want to do tonight is present to the board, just let you see the kind of money of fees that are being charged, what's being collected in all the different areas in general fees, curricular, co-curricular, extracurricular. But, and now the schools this year under new accounting procedures have to account even into more detail than what I'm showing you here right now. And you'll see more of that happening next year. And Jared has been working with the financial people at the school to get this accounting in place for school fees. So any of you have any questions about school fees?
I have one, and you've probably answered this before, but I just don't remember. Where does this money come from to cover those fees?
Right now, the schools absorb it.
Yeah,
There's no fund.
Particular
They
place?
just have to operate on what they really get. That's
And
it.
is that a problem for them at this time, or?
That's a tricky question. Because
But the funds have to come from somewhere besides the specific activity, because the funds received by the kids who are paying can't be used to pay for the waived fees.
And that's a new thing that's going in place this year, that schools have to, in the new accounting procedures, that we have to work through on that. Because you're right, that the law clearly states that now, and that puts a lot of jeopardy or a lot of challenges in with schools. And we're not quite sure how we're going to work all those details out yet. But if it comes right down to it, it means the district would have to provide money to schools in lieu of fee waivers.
I was at a meeting on Monday or Tuesday, Cameron Darby from the school's fees office presented. And there's a $55 million bill in front of will be in front of the legislature this year to pay for the co-curricular and the curricular fees that you see on that list across the state.
As a one-time thing?
No, I believe it's ongoing.
Ongoing.
And they're just taking this report as their evidence of fee waivers.
Is 5 million enough for the whole state?
55 million.
Oh, 55 million, okay.
And you know, and they're pulling this information from every district. And another district could be twice as high as we are on fee waivers, and another one could be half as what we are. So the state has to work out what's the fair way to cover fee waivers for school districts based on the percentage of fees that you're really waiving. And then sometimes when they give us a report, they kind of threaten you a little bit and say, you need to make sure you're waiving enough fees for students, and they put that target around 15%.
Really?
And you can see our percentages there on line, what is it, 66?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we're not getting the information out to parents. The information is out to parents. There's just parents who would rather, for most cases, would rather not have take a fee waiver, even though they may qualify for it. And so there's all kinds of factors, but I've heard the same thing that Tim said, that there may be some money in the legislature to help offset fee waivers. Now the district would have to decide, okay, now how do we do that to cover what you said, Terry, that you can't use funds from another area to supplant what had to be waived. That's where it'll go first.
But you also can't, the students who are not waiving fees can't pay for the ones that are waived.
Yep, that's why this money coming from the state would then come in and cover that. You can't raise the fee in order to cover that
Right.
other fee.
Right.
Yep.
Did our legislators think of that while they were making this
Well,
directive?
it'd be a big help to districts and schools, because you can see how much money they're losing on fee waivers, and there's no revenue stream for it at all.
Right.
There isn't.
Okay, thank you.
Did Tamara say when that new bill would go in? I mean, will it coincide with the with the deadline for the change that's going to take place this year?
As far as accounting for the fees,
Mm-hmm.
we just have to wait and see if the legislature will really allocate the funds. We'll go through this year the way we currently are, because the funds won't be there.
Right.
The bill
But,
would be for next year.
Right.
yeah. Mhm. But it would certainly be welcome if the state can find a fair way to distribute that. So every district has equal percent, whatever that is, on it.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have questions? Thank you, Mike. Next, we have a policy retirement proposal by Tim Smith. I really liked the classified.
Yeah, there are good, better, and best policies. The best policy is no policy written out. Better is a short one, but I'm not sure that this one doesn't go too far in being too short. So anyway, these two policies, one for certificated, one for classified staff, were intended to guide the distribution of activity passes to our employees each year. That process has changed, and in changing the process, we looked back at the policies and decided that it may be wise to retire the policies because we really don't need a policy for this. We just need guidelines. So now, currently, as it is, technology stepped in, and we are, staff can log on to any of the 4 high schools to an event that they would like to attend. They put in their employee number, and they can get 2 free passes for any event to attend. So, and we've been using that all fall, and it's worked very well.
That's great.
So our recommendation is that we retire these 2 policies off the books.
Anybody have any questions for Tim? Thanks for that recommendation. Getting rid of policy is awesome.
You might as well stay there.
Yep. I'm going to put the seat back there if I can.
We have the State of the District report, which the preliminary is very beautiful, created by Jenda and Tim. It will be presented by Tim Smith.
All right. So you've heard the adage, don't shoot the messenger. There's another one you may not have heard of. It's called don't give credit to the messenger. And what I mean by that is the best thing I ever did was hire Jenda because she makes everything look pretty. And she's done an excellent job. The only thing I could take credit for is the blue possibly in the report because that's the best color on the planet. And anything looks good with blue on it. And another thing with this report that you need to be aware of is that it represents not only the contribution of a lot of people giving us the data that goes in here, but also the work of the individuals that are represented in this report. So this is an interesting report because we skipped last year. We skipped testing. We skipped a State of the District report, and thank you for that. Last year as we dealt with COVID. This is our first snapshot of the district since COVID. We keep time in before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. So you'll get a snapshot of what we looked like before COVID and after COVID. So I'm going to pull up a presentation which you don't have.
Based on the picture here, we all look a lot older.
Yeah. True.
I thought we looked wiser too. And statistically, we had an outlier. As you can see, the one that was 7 or 8 inches taller than anybody else.
All right.
To shrink down a little bit.
All right. Can you see that on your screens?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. All right, this report's large, and one of the things, this isn't the final print version. We'll have that bound when we get there, but we didn't want to make the changes and have you suggest some other changes. When you have a statistician and an English teacher on the board, you have to be very careful when you go to print with something. So we wanted to provide some latitude for that today. But I'm not going to go through the entire report. I want to highlight some things for you tonight that I think speak to the status of the district. So first thing you ought to be aware of is we're definitely a growing district still. We're approaching 20,000 students depending on how you look at our numbers. We're not quite there yet, but we will soon pass that. We're the 11th largest, I believe, last time I looked, district in the state. I think the Herald Journal reported what I told her is the 11th fastest growing district in the state, which is not quite what I thought I said. One of our biggest challenges in the district are our limited English proficient students. That's something that we're working hard on as a district. But you can see our count there is 4.5 49% of our student population is limited English proficient. Not a biggest challenge as some districts face, but still significant. 3,600, over 3,600 employees. 55% of those have 10 plus years experience of our teachers in our classrooms, which is kind of an interesting statistic to look at.
Wait, Tim, is that 19,000 number for students, is that the October 1 count?
Yes.
Is that based on?
Yes, that should be our October 1 count.
Okay.
And not including preschool students and those students, so.
Okay.
All right, this slide looks at growth in our district, and you can see the significant growth that we've been experiencing for several years. We've been growing at a 300 to 500 clip per year, with the exception of the during COVID year, which is we only grew by 27 students, but you can see this year we made up for that. So the students who sat out for a year, either did online school somewhere else, they came back to us en masse. So we added 718 students this year for a total of 2,571 students in that 6-year period. That's significant growth. And the 1 year alone this year, that's an elementary school. That's one of our large elementary schools. So some significant challenges there. Thus, we'll be coming back to the board shortly, probably your next meeting, to talk about pressing forward with a bond building task force. This slide in there shows the growth that by school. So you can see we had 3 schools that dropped, but you can at least look across our schools and see which communities we're growing in. On page 7 of the report, because I had a very difficult time getting that slide to show, you can see by community how many students we have, and it really speaks to the fact that Smithfield is a bedroom community, because 3,607 students come out of Smithfield. It's by far our largest student population in the valley, all the way down to Mount Sterling, which gives us 2 students. And if you look in the middle of that chart, you can see that we take 714 students from the Logan city boundaries. So just to give you an idea, from the October 1 report, about 160 students are at Green Canyon, about 75 at Ridgeline, 12 and 14 at Mountain Crest and Skyview, and then the remainder of that 714 are interspersed across our 17 elementary schools. Probably more as you come in closer to the center of the city, but that's a significant draw of students we're taking from Logan. All right, this is important data for you to understand, and it's a very high-level snapshot of what we look at like as a district. But you remember that we did not test students in the spring of 2020 on their end-of-level tests. So the line where you see COVID in there is a missing year of data. But this gives you an indication of what we call the COVID drop. You can see across 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grades, you have 3 years of data across a 4-year span. You can see on the 3rd grade, you dropped 6 percentage points in proficiency, still well above the state proficiency levels as a district, but there was definitely an impact from COVID on our end-of-level tests with our students. And you can see that that COVID drop is more significant in the younger grades, that by the time you get to the 6th grade in language arts, there was no drop in that year. This is mathematics. You can see we had a drop off in mathematics, anywhere from 5 to 7 or 10% there. And then this is science. Science jumps back to that pattern, that not as significant of a drop in the 6th grade. Gary, did you want to say anything about the elementary?
Just real quick, I wanted to just say that I'm proud of our teachers. I'm proud of where we're at. If you notice, we're still well above the state in every one of these areas. The other thing is I look at national averages, they're saying about a 20% drop with COVID. And we're seeing most of ours are single digits. There's a couple of those that hit double digits, but nothing close to the 20%. Another way of looking at this, if you take those fourth graders on that science that's up in front of you right now, if you take the 2019 fourth graders, if we just move from year to year and look and call that a drop, that's true, but we're comparing kids who are 2 years different in age also. So if we look at the fourth grade 2019, those kids, 66% of those students were proficient. Those same kids are your 2021 sixth graders. So they're at a 67. So really, if we, apples to apples, if you're comparing the same kids against themselves, they actually went up. By the time they got to sixth grade, we still made growth with those students. More of those students were proficient. And that's after finishing their fourth grade year online, doing their fifth grade year in masks, and having a shorter day. And I'll be honest, science is probably the one subject that got cut a little more than, let's say, our reading or math. So that's pretty impressive that they came off on there. So I just like to say well done to our teachers and to our students.
Yeah, this is really awesome. Can I just make one comment, Tim,
Sure.
about the presentation? It was confusing to me momentarily to look at the legend for these bar charts. For some reason at first I was thinking when it says CCSD proficiency versus state level proficiency that we're talking about two different levels of proficiency, you know what I mean? As opposed to like two different standards, as opposed to the district's level percent versus the state percent.
Gotcha.
I'm just wondering if that legend might be
Tweaked?
Yeah, just so that it's clear to people who are reading this that we're talking about level of proficiency in the district versus level of proficiency in the state.
Okay, perfect. All right, good point. See, told you a statistician would help us out.
At least you didn't use pie charts. I have to applaud
Yeah,
you for that.
yeah, I stayed away from those purposely. I know how.
This is just amazing, though. I mean, that's really cool. Very, very gratifying.
This is the most gratifying chart because we actually got a call from the state of Utah, the state office, saying, we want to know what you did in your middle schools because your middle schools fared better than any middle schools in the state during COVID. I will tell you that we put an intense amount of effort in our middle schools over the last 4 years to standardize the curriculum. So we have a guaranteed viable curriculum across almost every subject level, and the teachers are all teaching on the same page. And I think that made a huge, huge difference in our middle school. So you can see 7th and 8th grade, we had no drop at all in our 8th grade language arts. Small drop in the 7th grade. As we jump over to mathematics, 4% drop in mathematics, 3% drop in the 7th grade, 3% drop in the 8th grade. And then in science, we actually dropped just 2 percentage points in the 7th grade and grew 2 percentage points in the 8th grade. So again, the state was, we did better, they said, than any middle school group in the state as far as keeping our scores where we needed to on that. So kudos to our middle school teachers. We did not fare so well in the high schools. And so if you look at our Aspire data, at least in the 9th and 10th grade, this is our English. Significant drops, 7% in the 9th grade on language arts or English, and 11 points here on that chart as well. Still above the state averages. Same type of thing, 13 points and 14 points on our math. And then 11 and 6 respectively on our reading, and a similar thing on our science. Down, in fact, the state was higher than our 9th grade on science. That's something that we're looking at closely. It's not out of step with the rest of the state, certainly. In fact, I think we fared better than most of the state. there is a sense that we had more apathy in the secondary settings. One of the things that we don't like very well about the Aspire is it's not tied to a teacher. And a lot of times you have a relationship with a teacher when you go into a test, and the student will want to perform for the teacher who's taught them. But that's not necessarily the case with the Aspire test anymore like it is in an elementary school. So they go into the test just, okay, I'm going to test, so I'm going to Christmas tree this thing because I'm not accountable to anyone really. And we think that apathy with that and attendance is probably hurting us. And it'll probably take us some time to rebuild that rigor in our test taking. If you look at our ACT scores, and that's what this chart is looking at, and these are, of course, I don't know if those are state level. We may have an issue there. I believe that's state, isn't it? They're not comparing us nationally there, and we made a mistake. We'll have to check that. Anyway, we're doing well with ACT scores. Those are scored differently. That's on a 35-point scale. So we did drop. We did have a COVID drop, and you can see that when you break that out across our high schools. We have a 95% graduation rate still as a district. That's, if not the highest in the state. I think we were tied with Joab 2 years ago. Very good graduation rate. I want you to see what just came out from the state. This is our graduation rate that was just released, 94.51%, and then you can see that by high school. That's not in your State of the District report because I just slipped this in so that you could see our graduation rates across our high schools. Just because we honored Cache High a couple of times tonight, that is a phenomenal graduation rate for an alternative high school, 87.3%. That speaks to the quality of that program. The superintendent asked us a couple of years ago, well, you can graduate students. It doesn't mean they know the material, though. Maybe we just got the credit made up. Let's look at that so we can verify how well we're doing. We pulled their Aspire data. Cache High has some of the highest Aspire data in the state for an alternative high school. It's not at the level of our regular high schools, but it's very well done. So they're graduating kids, and those kids are building the competencies that they need to be successful.
Do you get to count the adult education people who graduate in that percentage? Or
No.
It's a different program.
It's a different program. You've heard of the Cokeville miracle. This is the COVID miracle. One of the significant things about this report is we wanted to capture, for posterity's sake, just what we went through in the last 20 months. So a great deal of the report is a timeline that Jenda put together. She had a stack about that thick on her desk of all the emails we sent out as a PIO office over the last 20 months. And we sifted through that. She mainly sifted through that and pulled this timeline together. It's fascinating to read through and see how quickly things came along and some of the things that we pulled off in a year. It'll at least serve as a historical perspective. And that's what this slide's all about. That in the spring of 2020, in just a matter of days, we moved an entire brick and mortar system online. I think it was over a weekend. I still remember meeting with our tech team on a Saturday. The closest thing I can liken it to is the post-September 11th when our country came together. It was that kind of feeling as teachers, parents, students, and others just rallied around and said, okay, we'll do what we need to do to get through a crisis. And that's a good feeling when a community comes together like that and supports one another. Just some highlights we've pulled. That spring we served 409,808 grab-and-go meals distributed in April of 2020. That's compared to 150, that's 1 month. That's compared to 157,000 meals we did in the before COVID year. So That took bus drivers, that took lunch services. That statistic alone is amazing. You can see a quote there from a parent who was very appreciative that the district went to the lengths it did to deliver meals to homes. I rode a bus one day. It was a phenomenal experience to see parents and students come out to the sidewalk to get their lunch. I think it was a welcome break for parents who were struggling to be their teachers at home. These are just some quotes from an employee, a couple of parents. This is again in the spring of 2020. As I drove away from school today, I couldn't help but feel grateful to the work for this district. Super supportive administrators, words of hope from the superintendent, emails being answered late into the night, teachers sacrificing time to help each other and their students, and a district keeping people employed. It brought me to tears. Thanks for creating such a good district. So it's things like this that just help capture the feeling of the moment of this is a great place to work and this is a great community to live in.
I've read through this, not in detail, not just kind of hurrying through it, but is there a place in here where we do mention that all of the support staff remained employed during this time and helping out with different things? Or
yeah, I don't know if we specifically say that. I mean, obviously it's alluded to in that thing I just read, but
I just think that's pretty awesome that no one lost their job
yeah,
through this whole thing. An effort was made to keep them employed,
yeah.
and it worked.
That's been something the superintendent's had as a priority for a long time. When we went through the 2008 recession, we all took a pay cut so that everybody kept their job, and that's what a family does when they pull together. So
I don't know if you want to add that. If you're looking at this as a history, I think that's something that should be mentioned because
okay.
I'll bet other districts did not do it that way.
Okay, we'll look at that. Thank you. Of course, this was what we presented to you in the fall of 2020, which was this is a snapshot of our reopening plan and one graphic reminder of what we went through. That may be even an appropriate term, graphic reminder. We had about 850 students who went online to our online program. Kurt Jenkins and his staff pulled off another miracle to spin up an entirely new K-8 program, which didn't exist just weeks or months earlier. And we had 850 students we served in that online program for an entire school year. Of course, we went and did things as a school district that we never imagined doing. We stuck swabs in people's noses, which, it's not in any of our job descriptions, and did a lot of testing. Our custodians cleaned. This shows that 5,470 additional man hours spent to ensure the facilities were cleaned. I still get a little emotional about our nurses who continue to work 12, 15-hour days every day to monitor COVID, to intervene. I often talk to our nurses in the evening when they're sending out reports of COVID cases that are taking place in our district right now. They have been the unsung heroes, and I would strongly feel like there's some of these folks we ought to take some time to recognize at the appropriate time for all the work that they've put in. This is an interesting chart that's actually in there. Jenda pulled this together from our COVID dashboard that we had, and you can see it doesn't have an exact date for the peak there, but that peak is very close to today. I'm not sure the exact date. I think it was the 24th of November we hit our high count. Is that pretty close, Jenda? We probably should put that on here if we can. Yeah. So November 24th, we hit the peak last year. We are at 89 cases as of an hour before this meeting. We've peaked at 125 this year. The reason I want to point that out is that's incredible when you consider last year at this time, everybody was in masks. We didn't have school dances. We didn't have large gatherings of individuals. We didn't have people going to the businesses or restaurants without masking up. Some restaurants were closed. And yet we really aren't, because of the blessing of a vaccine and testing, that we didn't have those tools last year. We're really not experiencing COVID in levels that are any different than they were last year. We're hopeful that we peak in the fall again and start to drop off. Just to give you an idea as a board, cases are much more prevalent this year in our elementary schools where we have unvaccinated individuals. We have, I think, 3 or 4 elementary schools that are hot spots right now. We typically get about 8 to 12 cases in our elementary schools. We capture it, we do voluntary testing. That fades out after a few days, and because we got on top of it. That's our work of our nurses and our principals out there monitoring cases. We don't wait for the health department to get the results back. We get them directly from the parents so that we can do that. So we kind of see those numbers as probably dropping off as we go along here. Just to give you an idea on, this is again not in the state of the district, this is just for your information. We've had vaccinations available to 5 to 11-year-olds for about 10 days now. We looked at the data this morning. I believe the number was I don't have my book right in front of me, 1,033 vaccinations. That's in our entire Bear River Health District of 5 to 11-year-olds. That's out of 26,000 potential 5 to 11-year-olds. So you can see our vaccination rate in the first 10 days is rather low. People are not taking their kids to get vaccinated in large numbers. That is consistent. We looked, I had the health department pull up all of the counties or health districts across the state. That is not unique to us. That's happening across Utah. So that's just for your information, so you kind of know how that's looking. If you look at our 12 to 17-year-olds in our school district, we're roughly about 50% of that population is vaccinated, and we're not having near the number of cases in our secondary schools that we saw last year at this time. So it is tracking the unvaccinated to some degree. That's not always a bad thing, because we're also building immunity at the same time. But all right, and then this is just our test to stay last year was just over 1%. We got our first vaccines in the spring last year, where we vaccinated over 800 of our employees in the first week that it was available. These are just a fun couple of quotes that we pulled from elementary and secondary kids. This is one of my favorites. Well said in terms of an elementary kid. I'm not a fan of COVID-19. Well, guess what? Neither are any of the rest of us. I love this one. I do not recommend doing school from home anymore. I learn a lot better from my teachers than my parents. My parents are smart, but they aren't like a teacher. I like being able to go to art and music and being around kids my own age.
Did you take this word for word?
Yes.
So that's why then is there instead of then?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We knew you'd catch that.
He was going to correct you.
Yeah. No, these are direct quotes.
Yeah.
Tell the teacher, how often do you hear this from a student? This is a high schooler. Tell the teachers thank you. I don't think I've ever appreciated teachers more in my life. They do an amazing job, and I'm very grateful that they keep trying with us and so willing to just help us learn. Out of our survey, the 2 things that teenagers missed most of all during our shutdown, teachers and friends. And how often do they put teachers next to their friends? And it really helped, I think, our students really appreciate teachers. And then this idea that socializing is one of the big reasons we do school. And we forget that sometimes how important that is. I think we all recognize that in our own lives, that when we're not socializing, we're not going to religious functions or school or as employees, it makes a difference. It changes the way you see the world, and it really makes us think about how important it is to socialize. And the kids notice that. I could pull out many quotes where they talked about some depression or anxiety because they weren't around other people. It was very difficult for them. Anyway, there's a lot more in the report. There's a snapshot of all of our schools and principals and numbers, but basically many thanks to everybody for their efforts and dedication to make our district successful in a trying time. Any questions about the state of the district?
This is very well done.
I love all
nice
the
job.
pictures. Yeah, the pictures are great. Really great pictures.
And just the history of how how COVID kind of rolled out. I mean, I can't say. Of course, the presentation overall is fantastic, but for you to take the time to compile all that just for the historical record is pretty amazing. I feel just kind of almost like I'm welling up just going through these pages and going back through step by step how this is all transpired, but you've performed a great service by compiling all that information in one place. That's going to be something I think that everybody in the district, teachers and staff and so on are going to put in their kind of treasure box to remember this.
This is one report that I think we run enough copies off to give to everybody who went through the battle.
And we need enough copies. I've talked to Agenda for our legislators to have this as well. I've sent it off to them in the past. Do you want me to do that again? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Can you wait until we fix a couple more errors?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Shows really well.
Thank you. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim and Jenda.
Yeah.
Especially
Bravo.
Jenda, that's a ton of work and very nicely done.
This is, this is something, when you have the final product, it's something I definitely want to share with our upper administration at Utah State to see if they can compile something that's similar, just for the sake of remembering it, because it's amazing to me how quickly people forget.
Oh,
Yeah.
Even now, how they move on to the next kind of rancorous topic without remembering what was accomplished. So this is really important.
It's a coffee table book.
I was going to say at one point too, any appreciation you can show to administrators or teachers or support staff right now. I told you about the post 9/11 feeling where the community came together. There's almost a tearing apart of the fabric right now, and I think there's not that same appreciation in the air for that group that's still working very hard through a very difficult year, and it's just good. I think they certainly appreciated. Soup said he got more thank yous for the salary augmentation than he's ever gotten, and I think that was very nice for the board to do that for them.
And who wrote this month's thank you?
it was
Randall.
good.
That was me.
I guessed it was Randall, but I just wanted to check. Nicely done. Thank you
It
very
was
much.
Very nice.
I was happy my name was on there too. Anybody else? Okay, monthly financial report. Dun, dun, dun. It's the climax of the meeting.
Following that up, yeah. No, just my 2 cents as well. I really enjoyed that report, and it's awesome, Jenda. Even though my experience during COVID was primarily in another school district, I think every picture and every quote brought back feelings and memories for myself that to an extent I've forgotten about. So that was an interesting journey. I love the historical part of that report that you put together. That's great. Just a little precursor to my brief financial report. We had this week a day of financial training with USBE that we were able to listen into. And superintendent took the time to do that as well, except he clicked on the wrong link and listened to one that was a year old. So if he gives you information,
Never should have been sent out.
yeah,
Don't- yeah.
if he gives you information that seems a little off, I just wanted you to know that that's probably why. So, you'll, just to the board members, you'll notice that on the consent agenda, we have the financial reports for approval now from the prior month. And that will give us a month if there are ever any questions or anything that we need to shore up or answer before that's approved by the board. That'll give us that time. And then I'll give the report for the prior month in the meeting as you're accustomed to. For October, there's nothing out of the ordinary. Everything balances out for the month, which with all of the numbers that we're dealing with is a minor miracle each month that can happen, but glad to report that's the case. Our revenues and expenditures are tracking similar to previous years, and right now we're working on mid-year program adjustments and funding adjustments that tend to come throughout the year. So working on getting those put into our budget. The October 1st count, with the student growth that we have, we anticipate receiving some additional WPU funding for this year, and that actually flows into next year's funding as well. And that will help fund the salary supplement that I think Tim just mentioned that went out to our employees this week, which I think is a really nice thing to be able to do. So that's my report, unless there are any questions.
Anyone? I like that change, Jared. Thank you for changing that in the agenda so that it's just part of the consent agenda. It makes sense to be there. Okay, board member reports. Anyone?
Yes, I wanted to just kind of get our Christmas party organized and get some input on that. I guess Jenda didn't get, or not Jenda, Carolyn didn't get my email, or I messed up. Okay, so as near as I could tell, everyone was in favor of doing a board party, correct? Mm-hmm. Right? And of everyone who's here, all is planning to be there except for Larry, maybe not, right? Okay.
Unless you pray for bad weather.
Mm-hmm. All right, so.
He can't fish.
That's right. Last year, for the entree, we had beef tenderloins, and everyone seemed to like that. Do you want to go with that again?
Sure.
All right, so then we need some assignments for salads, and you can call me or email me or text me. We need someone to do a green salad, someone to do a set salad, someone to do a pasta, a potato salad, and then someone to do rolls, and I will take care of the desserts.
So green?
Okay.
We'll do rolls.
Okay, hang on.
My wife will kill me, but we'll do them anyway. Yeah.
Well, she can buy them.
That's not in her nature. But
Okay.
Thanks for the offer.
All right. Okay, so we just still need a set and like a pasta salad. And then, all right, so are you up for an activity at the party? Or not?
Well,
Sure.
let us get the meal through, and then whatever you want to do with this.
Okay. All right, so here are some possible options for this time.
No dance.
No dance,
No,
okay.
do a dance.
Twister.
I'm gonna bring the liquor, so I think
There you go.
I think the activity will be great after that.
Okay, so I'm thinking we can do the white elephant or the $5 gift thing that we've done before. I've got one more round of chocolates with quotes that we can do. That's kind of fun. We did do 4th of July bingo once with a cute little games, and winners got those games to take home with their families, and we can do it with Christmas bingo with prizes, and everybody gets a bingo set to take home for their families to do at their family party. Do you care which one we do? Do you hate any of them?
It's been a while since we've done white elephants, and those are kind of fun.
I like white elephant.
Okay, all right. All right, so should we say everybody, including the spouse, needs to have a $5 gift to share, and we will do that.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, and it'll just be after the board meeting on the, when is it, the second? Second, at my home.
Okay.
Okay.
And for the record, you are always in charge of parties and fun, because I don't think about that. So don't wait for me to ask you to do it.
Just go ahead.
Just do it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I got a confession to make. I can't bring rolls. I will
You can't do that to your wife?
We'll still be in Texas on the 2nd.
Oh, so you won't be there?
We won't be there.
Oh, we can really raise Cain then without you. Perfect.
Jared will be there.
Oh, okay. Well, not so much Cain then.
Put me down for rolls.
We
I
could
could
probably
do
do
rolls.
rolls, yeah.
Oh, okay. So do you guys want to do paper, whatever that
Paper,
is?
rock, scissors?
Yeah, to see who
I
brings
know,
the roll.
Tanya won't be able to make it, so it might be good if I did rolls. So.
Okay, all right. So we'll put you down then, Randall, and, okay.
What's left, Kathy?
Set salad and like a pasta salad.
We can do a pasta salad.
Okay, awesome.
We can do a set salad.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks, we're set.
Great. Thank you very much.
50% of the people in my marriage like Jell-O.
The whole population goes with Jell-O.
Yeah.
It's Barb, so she'll be happy to make
Put a little celery in it and you'll convert them.
And a little bit of grated carrots.
Yeah. Mayo on top.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Now, reminding you, I just told you that I'm not the party or the fun girl. That's Kathy. So we're back to the board president report now. So I'm reporting that since our last meeting, I attended the Cash Education Foundation board meeting, and you have a little stapled packet of papers that just I thought I would share with you from that meeting. The Tools for Schools grants, this year they did $250 to every teacher who requested. I was shocked that every teacher in the district did not request because they had enough money to do that, but there were some teachers who did not. So this is the totals for the schools for what was awarded to them from Cash Education Foundation. The committee, the Tools for Schools committee decided to, or voted to raise the amount that teachers can request to $300 for next year because that's the cost, the average cost of a Chromebook, Tim? Is that the average cost? Or the cost of the Chromebooks that we get in our district, anyway?
And there were very few Chromebooks secondary level purchased this year.
So they are raising the minimum for, or they're raising the maximum for next year's Tools for Schools. The incentives for excellence are all technology grant applications. You can see there's only one that was declined, and that was South Cash's request for a candy machine. The Just My Wish Awards are from is a committee headed by Regan Wheeler, who lives in Lewiston, and it provides hardbound books for media centers. Any media center, a teacher can request funds from Just My Wish, and that gives you not only this year's what they raised and what they matched. So if you look down the left-hand column on the Just My Wish report, it lists in the bottom half under media, it lists a year, so like 2021, 2022, and then a CEF match. The 2021-2022 $10,006 is raised by Regan Wheeler himself from his own fundraising with patrons and friends and all of that. And then the CEF match is to match what he raises, at least what he raises. So that's very impressive to me, and it all goes to hardbound books. Then the last two pages show you The Christmas Jubilee, upcoming Christmas Jubilee, it will be held next Monday. And I just wanted you to see who some of the supporters of Cash Education Foundation contributors are, with the table sales and the silent auction. These are all people who are paying to sit at the tables and donating silent auction items for that. And I really feel strongly that we should have a board member attend this every year, just so you can see it. I had the opportunity to attend last year, and it was very impressive, the amount. I mean, I know it's a fundraising dinner and all of that stuff, but the work that people go to bring money in for our teachers is just impressive. And Kathy requested to go this year, so she's going to attend on Monday, right?
Oh, coming up Monday?
Yeah.
Didn't know that, but that will be great. Now,
Well, you asked me if you could go.
We can have more than one board member if somebody else wants to go.
You
We've
don't
got
have all of your table
two
spots filled?
tables.
You
Two
have two tables?
Yep.
So if any of the rest of you would like to go and
But you need to just let us know.
have a date, then you could go. Jared, I think you ought to go, if you can, not necessarily this year, but you ought to go sometime, since you're now on the executive committee of CEF.
so tell me again where this is.
Riverwoods,
Oh, yeah.
the big ballroom.
Yeah.
And they set up all of the Christmas trees and the wreaths and the silent auction stuff there. Anyone have any questions about CEF?
That's a great report.
Then I was invited to attend by Kurt Jenkins' School Violence Prevention Roundtable. That was fascinating to me because there were several, Mike and Tim were both there, and all of the school resource officers that are hired by our district. How does that work? They're hired, they're paid,
It all goes through,
they're all sheriff's office employees,
they
but
are, and we have a contract, and we just pay them a certain amount, and then they put the people in our space.
So all the school resource officers were there that work in our district, as well as their supervisor and his supervisor, and Tim and Mike, and all of the high schools administrators were represented except Green Canyon. No middle school administrators were there. I was kind of surprised by that, but anyway, it was a very fascinating experience for me to be there and listen to them talk about that 1 to 5% of students who need extra attention at school, especially at secondary, and what they're doing to try and be proactive in preventing problems at school. And I appreciated Tim being there. He requested, because there were several people who said that school violence is escalating in our district. So Tim asked for where they were getting data, and no one had data. So they're currently working on that. And Tim and Mike had a meeting with the secondary principals after that, right? The middle school principals.
And you got the data I pulled from sheriff's reports?
Yep.
And I've got the incident reports almost done from the schools. Give that to you.
Okay. And in a couple of schools, incidents are increasing dramatically, but not in all of them. And so the trend is not up except for in a couple of our schools. But apparently they're going to continue to have that meeting, I don't know how often. The other thing I need to report, I also went to a USBA executive committee meeting, and did I tell of you last time that I keep getting emails from parents who are concerned about the letter that went to NSBA, and that where NSBA sent a letter to President Biden and called violent parents in school board meetings domestic terrorists. And so that's getting a huge pushback. And to the point that Burgess Owens just, who sits on the National Education Committee for something, is requesting more parental involvement in education decision-making. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but there's a lot of those types of issues out there that we may or may not be seeing in the in the news. And so that brings me around to graduation, because all of the surveys that the principals sent out to parents came back with the parents who responded preferred graduation in their schools and or at their schools. And so I wonder if we should, now that Chris has opened the dialogue with USU for more personalized graduation programs up there, if we should, rather than mandating where graduation will be, since the schools are paying for it themselves, and parents are, we need to recognize their wishes, allow the schools to make the decision themselves, whether they, because USU is now available and Chris has opened that dialogue so that schools can do it in a personalized way there, or they could have it at their school. I have so many parents who have talked to me about this, and I just have to bring it up again.
I like the idea of letting them choose. And I think there will be schools that will do it at USU because it's easier.
And
really.
costs less.
And costs less. And I think there will be some that will choose the other route to do it. So I'm fine with that.
I think we have very capable principals and administrators, and I think they can make wise choices, and I second that. I think I'm fine with them letting them decide. I know Box Elder does it. I know their district, Box Elder is going to go to Weber State, and Bear River is going to do their own, so they're letting them decide.
The other thing it might do is, if the parents feel that strongly about it, you know, they may volunteer to help, or you know, maybe there's some opportunities there to involve the parents more in that opportunity. So I'm fine with them making the choice.
How do you all feel about having Chris continue with his graduation committee just so that they're talking about it? Or can they do that in just, not just, but in secondary principals? Is it appropriate in a secondary principals PLC? Are they doing those?
Mike had them together last year to talk about graduation, and then I know they got together on their own to try to coordinate. Not that they all did the same thing, but that was kind of the plan this year, is if we were going to USU, is to get them together and at least have some continuity process. Part of that was to save on resources, to not have to set up 4 different ways.
Yes, Gary and I heard about the graduation competition yesterday from a very upset mother at a PTA meeting.
What was the nature of that parent's comments?
Her comments were that she lost 2 graduations for her oldest 2 children in 2020 and then in 2021. She said, I understand 2020, I don't understand 2021.
What was it that she says that she lost?
That her kid being able to go through a ceremony because they didn't do that at Mountain Crest.
I see.
But Ridgeline did. And so she was quite upset about that. How come Ridgeline could have graduation for their kids, but my kid couldn't get one?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. I think leaving it up to schools at this point is a terrible idea. And the reason, this is part of the reason, because those inequities will develop, and they'll develop very quickly. I mean, I'm not saying that, I would just be adamantly opposed if we went that route, if the board decided as a majority that they wanted to do that. But, in sitting down a couple of weeks ago in that, meeting we had up at Utah State, it was becoming more and more apparent to me that it was a terrible idea for us to allow just kind of a free-for-all at the individual schools. I mean, there are 5 high schools in this district. And there are already, some disparities that arise in terms of how high schools, the resources that they have available. I mean, it sounds great to say that, you can get parents involved, for example. But the problem is that we all know that some parents are going to have access to more resources than other parents. So, schools are going to have access to different resources. And it's going to become a competition in terms of, the social media potential and just the splashiness and so on. Just one last thought, though. I think having it at the individual high schools is costlier. It's more labor intensive. And I think that it has the potential to lead to those kinds of inequities. Not to mention the issues with the unpredictability of the conditions, weather, the inability for people to invite anybody that they want to come because space is limited. When we had that meeting, what I told Tim, and he probably reported on this in the last meeting that I didn't attend, but there's a very good possibility that because Utah State is interested in maintaining a good relationship with Cache County School District, there's a good possibility that a lot of the costs will be waived, in the short term over the next 1 to 3 years, so that Utah State can, basically engage the district in a reset, after COVID. My feeling about the parents is, yes, there are parents that are more outspoken, but none of those surveys was scientific, and none of them was informed, meaning parents didn't have the choices laid out in a way that illustrated for them what the differences would be in things like cost, or the ability of people to attend, or the impact of the weather. I mean, none of that was discussed. The question that was posed to them was, did you have a good time during the COVID ceremonies, and would you like to see that continue? And of course, parents who selected themselves to respond to that survey, which, by the way, I appreciate the principals trying to gather public feedback, but relative to all of the parents in a district, relatively few responded. It was in maybe the couple hundreds. That's what Principal Snow reported, when he was here, during that panel. In other words, I don't think the parents really understand what the choices are. And as I've talked to students, especially and some parents in Green Canyon, and I've laid it out for them, and I've just asked for their feedback about which venue they thought would be better. In terms of what they could do in the spectrum, a lot of the young people that I talked to were more excited about that venue than doing it in their own high school. Now, I'm not saying that that's any more scientific than any of the other anecdotes that we've been gathering up to this point, but still, it would take it would take a better designed survey for us to really understand what parents' feelings were once they were actually properly informed about things like costs and labor and the unpredictability of conditions, their ability to invite additional people. I mean, those are huge issues. If we get a sleet storm when somebody is trying to have graduation at the end of May, then all the plans that they've laid and all the work that's been invested in that ceremony, it's just eliminated basically at a great cost. So I guess the more I've kind of delved into this, the more strongly I feel that coming out of a crisis like a pandemic is probably not a great time to just allow people to go off and do whatever they want for those reasons.
But wouldn't principals be the check and balance here? I mean, they're ultimately going to decide, right, how that's going to happen. So they'd have to weigh all that out, the weather, the cost, all that stuff. I mean, it's not like we're going to let the parents run wild per se. They'd have to make that decision based on the inputs from, and their judgment. I mean, we're just saying that we're not going to decide where they're going to have it, right? They're the ones that will make that decision. And
I think a lot of the costs were kind of high the first initial years because they may have had to buy extra equipment, sound system, and I don't think following years would be that bad because, they paid for it up front the first, 2 years. So I think, it may not be as high going forward.
Could we do a more scientific parent survey?
Well, the kind of effort I'm talking about would take, time because you would have to actually, have some information about things like cost and capacity and so on. And you would need to sit down with parents, or you would need to have some way to communicate with them so that they would understand what the options were and what the implications would be with any of these options. And so, I don't.
Would it then become too complicated?
Together. What's that?
Would it then become too complicated for some of our parents to understand?
I don't think so. I mean, I think a parent can understand the risk of, weather, or they can understand the issue of limited capacity.
What do other districts do? Does anyone know? Do they just let each high school?
Randall just said in
BC, or what's over drink?
Well,
I
probably.
don't know if, Randall just told you what Bucks Elder does. I have not talked to other superintendents about how they handle this. It'd be very easy. I could do that tomorrow. If you
Might be
wanted that
good
piece
to
of
know
information.
if it's worked to let the different schools do it their own way.
My very unscientific experience with surveys is it was sent out, do you want to have it the way we did the last 2 years, or do you want to go back to the university? And you had the parents that were passionate about wanting it there. If you had reworded, do you want to go to the university or stay there? I guess what I'm saying, the silent majority, I think, comes into play here too. I think there are a lot of folks that they're going to the university. That's fine with me. I'm not going to bother answering the survey.
Mm-hmm.
I think that enters in. The only feedback I've had is concerns about the haves and the have-nots. There's a lot of that down on my end.
But don't the principals work on that when they're planning that in their meetings?
No, they do it as an individual high school. And that's why there was quite a bit of disparity. You can see a lot of that, of really what happened in schools.
Except that Tim just said that principals talked about it together in there.
There was still disparity. They didn't come away and do the same thing necessarily. I mean, you had Skyview, they did the drive-through the one year, and then they went to the field. They were the only one that did
Throw out COVID. That doesn't count. That was 2020. Let's just talk about this past May.
Yeah, so Skyview did the field.
Mhm.
We're probably the only one that did a full-scale ceremony that was on a field where they could house, it's hard to say they housed as many as wanted to come because we were still in a kind of a COVID year, so I don't think they can house as many in their stadium as we could at USU. But as been pointed out, if there had been a storm, which is not out of the question at the end of May, it turned out to be a great event that day. The sound was perfect, the setting was perfect, the sun was out. Could have been different given the weather. Then the other ones did, one did I think a mix of a ceremony and then the personalization comes through, and then there was kind of a mix with those on how they did it. Is that was your experience as well?
Green Canyon did theirs on the football field also. They did. They had a football field team after they had done the diploma thing. Skyview did the most traditional.
Yeah.
The most traditional one.
Well, Cash probably did the most traditional. I think they did theirs pretty much like they always do.
Yeah, they did. Outside of the USU venue. But the Ridgeline allowed parents to attend theirs inside, and Mountain Crest did not. And that was the mother that, wasn't that the mother's issue that we talked to yesterday?
And those are the two, I think, big issues we worry about the most is weather and access of parents to come to whatever the school decides to hold. And I think that's the reason the schools went to USU years ago. Sure. Over those two issues.
That totally makes sense. I don't think that we should mandate something like that. I think we should allow the principals, the administrators to use their brains and make the decision with their school community. Can they not do that and not have disparity?
One thought I've had, and if you would give us a little time, if we set up some guidelines about what we thought was an appropriate way to end the year and have a graduation exercise, certain standards we expected to be met, and brought them back to you, and you could look at them, and then they could look at those, and part of it would be the things we've talked about tonight. Can everybody have access to the main ceremony? What would you do if you were planning outside? What options would you have? I just think we could come up with some guidelines that probably would give them enough direction that they would either end up going to a venue that's large enough to take care of everybody, or they would roll the dice and take a gamble on doing it in their stadium, and one rain out and they'd be up to the.
I think having some guidelines would be, some written guidelines would be very excellent.
I think we could come up with those very easily for you by the next board meeting.
I think part of it goes back to if the entity of a school board is who grants a diploma, it would seem that school board would want to have some guideline on how that is handled, rather than the institution that grants the diploma saying to each individual school underneath that school board, oh, do it how you want to do it, if that makes sense. It would seem like guidelines would be very helpful in that case.
Well, I think if you can create some guidelines that would.
Let us just try it.
Okay.
Bring it back. Yeah, I think there's room for a compromise here, and I think eventually there was no, I mean, it was during my tenure that we've ended up at Skyview, ending up on the campus. It didn't always used to be done that way. There were times when we had it at Fine Arts
auditorium.
Center and all kinds of places, but we just outgrew it. So we ended up the only place in the valley that's large enough to handle that. And if that becomes the main criteria, then I think it behooves us to give some guidelines to schools saying, this is how we'd like to recognize our graduates. These are the guidelines by which we'd like to do it. And one of those is certainly that every parent and sibling and friends can come to the graduation. I think you could solve some of these issues.
I did have some grandparent comment to me that they really liked the Zoom aspect of Skyview because they didn't have to go, but
Well,
they
we
could
can
still
always
watch.
do that.
Sure.
That's a given.
Yeah, we've learned some things
Yeah.
that we can make these better, absolutely.
Yeah, and one of them is that, grandma and grandpa don't necessarily have to walk up those stairs and sit in way up high where the only chance they see is somebody walking across. You can be in your living room and have it right there.
So, Mike, are all of the principals scheduled? Have they scheduled their schools up at USU at the present time, or?
We've committed 2 days right now to Utah State. Now, would Utah State let us out of those? I don't know. But they've held those 2 dates for us.
So maybe we need to have that information too for this year.
Call them and see, because we need to be fair with them.
Right.
Well, and the bottom line is not everybody's going to be happy. I mean, I've heard from both sides, and you just
Well,
need to-
and here's what I see in deference to that. People liked some of the individualized attention. I think schools can still do stuff like that. And you can still have a lot of the things that they did at the school on top of what we do up there.
Sure.
But the formal granting of the diploma needs to have some guidelines about how it's done.
Sure.
And I think we need to clarify who actually hands the diploma out too, because we have a wide range of what happens there. But normally, it should be, in my estimation, a board member who handles that, because that's where the diploma's coming from the Cache County School District. That's where the authority comes for those kids to graduate. So we can clarify that too, so that we have that. I think we can give you some guidelines that you might be able to live with without. I doubt there's a district in the state, I'll just come out and say that has a board policy that mandates something about graduation. I think it's probably guidelines and that's all it is.
I can't imagine that, like Alpine, for instance, how many high schools do they have?
Oh, they'd have.
70?
I would imagine like a Marriott Center and
like 15.
down there pretty busy,
Yeah.
used facility.
I just can't picture Alpine, for instance, the largest school district in the state, mandating that every high school has to do it exactly the same.
Well, I don't think that.
Guidelines, yes, but not that they all have to be in the same, they couldn't do it, I mean, logistically, they couldn't.
We never mandated, I think, that ours do it the same. They're similar because the way we do this, the guidelines have been similar in the past.
But I don't think that's exactly the issue, mandating the venue. And I love what, Dr. Norton has said, because the issue is to establish some principles that will ensure that, that people have access and that we don't start, hardwiring inequities into the process. I mean, and like we've talked about before, things like Zoom have their uses for sure, but, nobody's going to stop going to sporting events altogether and just argue that, well, COVID taught us that we can watch everything on TV. I mean, these community events still are important, and they have more impact when people are there, and there are more people there, quite frankly. So I think those kinds of principles are important, because if one principle is access, well, then what choices do we have? You know, outside of setting up a massive amount of chairs on a field and hoping and praying that we don't have a Cache Valley May deluge. And so I think that's my perspective. I think the thing that I guess I would just add that I find kind of surprising is some of these things we've actually brought up, and I still haven't heard a great, you know, I know, you know, Tim and I met, when we met up at USU, we had representatives from the different high schools and administrators, but I haven't heard a reason, you know, any kind of reasoning about this issue of access. And this is probably the most important issue. I mean, I would say second is control over the elements, but first is access. And, you know, you know, my family, and I think most families, like Larry pointed out, most families want to go to graduation, and they want to have a lot of family there, and family friends. And that's important to most families. You know, most of the families that did not respond to the kinds of surveys that were solicited over the past year. And I don't want, you know, and I think my views are probably representative of those kinds of families. I don't want to tell people in my family, like my, you know, my grown-up children and my, you know, our members of our extended family, that they can't come because there's not enough space. I mean, that is a paramount issue. And I haven't heard anything from any of the principals, you know, that counters that or that alleviates that issue. It's more about just kind of some of the fun aspects that have been, the creative aspects that have been thrown in over the past couple of years. And I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive, like the superintendent said.
Let's get the guidelines and see.
Yeah.
Unless, I can just be a devil's advocate, unless the graduation ceremony is the family show up at a time and that's all. That's what some of the schools did, is the family marched through the auditorium, independent of their friends, and anybody came. And that's a very different environment than you all come together as a community.
To me, that ultimately weakens the institution. You know, when it becomes that splintered that people feel like the graduation ceremony is only about the graduate, then you start seeing an erosion over time of community and institutional, you know, kind of, I don't know what the word would be, heft.
Okay, let us put something together for you.
And do you want to give us your superintendent's report?
I will.
Awesome.
I'll make it short. I just have a couple of thoughts. One is, from my military background, and Michael will appreciate this. Nobody knows what combat's like unless you've been in it. And so nobody knows what we've gone through in the last 2 years with COVID, except for those who've gone through it. And I just want you to know, I really, 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 really appreciate the fact that somebody 50 years from now is going to be able to pick up that and know what we went through. Now, they won't be able to understand how hard it was or the time and effort that went into it, but at least they'll know that there was a community in Logan and Cache Valley that pulled together and got kids through a couple of years of very difficult situations and did it admirably. And that State of the District report is just fantastic. And I am just so proud to be a part of this district. This is a premier school district in this country, and we do it on less dollars than almost anybody. I mean, we're at the bottom of the bottom in market value in this state, and this state's in the bottom of the categories about money per pupil. And so what that translates into is our teachers and everybody, every employee in this district works for less than they should. And they work, and the results are they do an admirable job. And I just want to thank you for capturing that. And even the discussions we had at this table are a part of my life forever. Whether to start school, I remember how difficult a decision that was. I remember the call from a teacher up at Skyview, what's her name?
Okay.
Adon, saying, just go walk through Skyview and tell me you're going to start school 2 days from now. And I remember taking that lonely walk. There was nobody there. There was just a lot of construction, and I didn't know whether to pull the trigger to start. And so I just bring that up because you were part of it, and I just want you to know how much it means to have the support of a board. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is our Teacher of the Year. How many years is our Cache District Teacher of the Year this year taught? 5? 5 years. To have a Cache District Teacher of the Year, earn that award in having only taught 5 years, is just a testament to the fact that we have a system that can take somebody who probably never dreamed they'd be a Teacher of the Year and turn them into that in 5 years. That little gal that teaches at the jail, Teacher of the Year after, she's only been with us a year and a half or just this year?
2.
Yeah. That's amazing that people would recognize somebody for putting forth the effort that little gal has. And it'll be a sad day when we lose her to higher ed, if we ever do. Did you hear me down there, son?
Not to convince her to do that.
So this is just an amazing district, and you've all been a part of it. Every time we've done something like at a PIO office, or the list just goes on and on. Putting coaches into our classroom for our teachers. I don't think there's been a single thing we've done that's had a more impact on the quality of instruction than having teachers become coaches of teachers and help them to become better. And I just amazed me when we honor Teachers of the Year who've only been in teaching for a limited time. And then the other side of it is you have